Hello, my name is Javier Jimenez, and today I will be talking about the events leading up to the American Civil War and what caused the American Civil War. Some of the causes for the American Civil War were the states' rights, territorial expansion, but the main conflict was the economy of slavery and the political control. The South did not want to follow laws that they did not support, especially laws that went against slave ownership. The South also wanted to move slavery into new territories while the North wished for the opposite. 1820, the Missouri Compromise. After the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, Congress had created a policy so that slavery could expand into the new Western Territory, Missouri. The idea of making Missouri a slave state ignited a national debate not only because of the growth of slavery, but because it would mean that majority in Congress would be pro-slavery. In conclusion, Congress made some agreements which is known as the Missouri Compromise. In the Missouri Compromise, it was stated that Missouri would become a slave state, but Maine would become a free state, which allowed for a balance in Congress. There was also the agreement of a 36-degree and 30 line, which was drawn to divide the North and South. 1850, the Compromise of 1850 and the Fugitive Slave Act. The Compromise of 1850 would make California a free state, but would not, however, allow slavery in the remaining Mexican cession while reinforcing the Fugitive Slave Act. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 was a law that made Northerners return any escaped slaves back to the South. 1852, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom's Cabin was written by Harriet Beecher Stowe, and it made the Northerners realize how hard and how bad the life of a slave was. The Southerners, however, didn't like what was being portrayed and went as far as to protest Stowe's writing for being slanderous. Despite this, Uncle Tom's Cabin was the second best-selling book during the 19th century. The popularity of the book also shed some light to the issue of slavery. 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 had been passed, and it had reversed what the Missouri Compromise had done by allowing both Northerners and Southerners to decide whether or not to allow slavery with a popular vote. This resulted in the event of Bleeding Kansas, where both people who were against slavery and people who were for slavery would go to Kansas to shift the decision of allowing slavery or not allowing slavery. The Bleeding Kansas event lasted for 5 years, in which 56 lives were lost due to bloodshed. 1857, Dred Scott versus Sanford. Dred Scott was a slave from Northern Virginia who was trying to sue in court for his freedom. Due to the Missouri Compromise, he stated that he was a free man. Eventually, though, this court case was being handled by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court had concluded that a slave was just considered property, had no rights, and were not citizens. 1859, John Brown's Raid. In October of 1859, John Brown had gathered whites and freed blacks to attack Harper's Ferry, Virginia, where the government had an arsenal. John wanted to spark slave uprisings by taking the weapons from the arsenal and distributing them. Although he succeeded at gaining the weapons, he was eventually forced to surrender by soldiers who were being commanded by Colonel Robert E. Lee. John was then executed after being captured. 1860, Abraham's election. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected as president. He was a Republican and he was anti-slavery, which many Southerners feared. After the voting polls had closed, South Carolina had split from the Union on December 20, 1860. This concludes the events leading up to the American Civil War and the causes of the American Civil War.